Alright, so last week you kind of blew me away with the response to my Rick and Morty video. So naturally, I've decided to make another one. And I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who watched the previous Rick and Morty video, people who liked it, the people who subscribed afterwards. I really appreciate it. So I did get some feedback in the comments section, and I wanted to address that here in this video. One criticism I got was that I was calling Space Beth the real Beth, and that the show hasn't actually revealed who the real Beth is. Which, come on guys, that's the whole point of like a theory video. And if you watch the whole video, which I get it, I'm a small channel, you watch like 2 minutes, you make up your mind, that's fine, whatever. But if you watch the whole video, the point I'm trying to get across isn't that some like side detail blah 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 points out that it has to be Space Beth, but that it doesn't matter which one it is. Like, it doesn't matter which one was the real Beth. That doesn't matter really anymore. The point I was trying to get across is Space Beth is the real Beth because Beth didn't choose to stay. Therefore, Space Beth is a representation of Beth's desire to leave. Then, a commenter, it was John, said, the only problem with the theory is that Beth never chose. She told Rick to choose. He didn't want her to stay. Beth never did or didn't. Then he wiped his memory so even he would forget which is real. Great vid though. Thank you, it was John. I forgot about this, so I had to go back and re-watch what he was talking about. It's about the 20-minute mark on Season 4, Episode 10, Starmort Return of the Jerry. And it's the episode where Space Beth returns to get revenge, as I mentioned in the previous video. And I admit, I forgot Beth told Rick to make the decision for her. But, come on. To quote a very wise man named Geddy Lee, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. So, like, in my personal opinion, anything other than telling Rick, no, I don't want to do that, basically condoning what Rick does. Like, if somebody asks me, hey man, can I borrow your car for a week? And I respond to that with, I'm going to leave my keys right here, and you decide whether you want to borrow my car for a week. I can't then get mad at the person for borrowing my fucking car. You know what I'm saying? Then we got a comment from Bat Signal, who says, at the end of the day, Rick only uses the Smiths as a surrogate family to deal with his broken heart, so he sees them all as tools to help him deal with his trauma. So by making a clone, he evaded the decision Beth gave him when he asked to choose between living with her or to let her go on an adventure. That's why he cloned her, because he can feel his desire to live with his daughter, but also have a daughter that used her potential to the fullest. They are all for Rick to feel fulfilled. And if this was like season 4 where Rick made the decision, season 5 even, I would agree. But I think with this season, we've definitely seen, especially after what happened with quote-unquote evil Morty, I think we're finally starting to see a different side of Rick, where he's like actually like trying to, I wouldn't say he's atoning for the things he's done, but he's actually trying to move forward. Even with the first episode of this season, you see that like Rick is finally learning to give up on his quest for revenge in order to be with a family again. He's finally starting to understand that maybe he should just move on from revenge when we see him return to his actual original dimension. I think at the end of the day, the real reason Rick cloned Beth is the same reason he made the portal, the alternate little pocket dimension for her when she was a kid. He's just giving in to whatever she wants. I know the show kind of makes it come across as like Beth giving him this like deep, heartfelt ultimatum, but like from Rick's perspective of the situation, it's literally like asking a kid, do you want chocolate or vanilla ice cream? And they say, I want both. And that's what Rick did. He gave her both ice cream. Because Rick has learned at this point that fundamentally every decision you make is going to leave you wanting and wondering what your life would be like if you hadn't made that decision, or if you went a different path. Because Rick has done so many different things at this point that he's come to terms with that, and he doesn't want her to really feel regret. So by doing this, the whole like bomb in the neck plan was perfect, because it would have combined their memories together, so it was like there were never two Beths to begin with. Which in hindsight is kind of cool. That's always like one of the top superpowers I always imagined I'd want. Because if you were able to like clone yourself, then you'd create this whole like existential crisis of like who's the real one, you know, Ship of Theseus kind of puzzle of like one of them goes and does this, another one does this, and then eventually you're two completely different people, even though you're the exact same person. I think the combining of the clones back together and the combining of the experiences fulfills like the ideal. Like, it's not even really a clone at that point. It's like a projection of yourself that just extends your own capabilities. Well, now that I've addressed the comments, let's get into the most recent episode of Rick and Morty, where we get to see Jerry eat a fortune cookie, and that's a really interesting episode. Had no idea fortune cookies could be so real, and the biting criticism of Gwyneth Paltrow was hilarious, to be honest. Even though it didn't really come across as very, like, well targeted. Like, Gwyneth Paltrow's a total grifter and everything, but it didn't really fit her character of, like, world domination, really. I feel like there are a lot of other people that you could have used in that place, but then you get into other conspiracy theories online, and they probably didn't want to get into too much of the weeds, and Gwyneth Paltrow is probably just an easy target at that point. I don't want to get into any spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it, but needless to say, we almost had Jerry join House Targaryen for a moment. It was just enjoyable to see another episode where it just like tortures Jerry throughout the entire time. It's hilarious whenever it does that. Jerry's in a lot of ways like Rick and Morty's version of like Meg in the earlier Family Guys, where like they don't want to develop his character too much, because part of the appeal of his character is just being a scapegoat for everyone else and a punching bag. So, don't get me wrong, I think the show is fair to point out that like Jerry's the most empathetic character in the entire show sometimes. And that despite how most fans see themselves, we're all pretty much Jerry's anyway. We're like, this season in general has kind of been all over the place. I really liked Solar Rig. It helped set the tone for the season and got us back in a, reasonable starting point again. And then A Mort Well Lived was one of those weird episodes where, it just starts you off in a random place and you just kind of like got to figure out what's going on. Summer did a Die Hard. It was one of those weird episodes, it just kind of like, I don't know, I didn't really love it. I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of the plot, and I didn't feel like it was all that terribly funny. It was just one of those episodes that I just feel like I'd never need to watch again. There was nothing really appealing about it in general, but I just watched it because it's more Rick and Morty, Same could be said for episode 4, Night Family. It's like an interesting concept. It's like one of those things that like, you're hanging out with your friends, you're like, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could just do stuff in my sleep? Like, basically, like, how people used to grind in RuneScape by, like, getting, like, bots to grind their skills up for them. That way, when they hopped on, they'd be higher level. That's literally what they were doing with their actual bodies. So, like, it's a fun little concept in general, but it just kind of landed flat again. Like, it didn't add anything to the overarching story, and it wasn't very funny. The funniest part was probably, like, the little scuffle at the end. But sandwiched in between those two little meh episodes was the one I mentioned at the top of the last video, the Bethic Twin Sync, which is where we, started this video talking about like Space Beth, Real Beth, and how they're into each other now. Literally. Which also, I think at the end of it kind of led to a weird, like, rare win for Jerry, too. Which is probably why they had to overcorrect so heavily in this last episode. Overall, I feel like episode 1 was the best of Rick and Morty. What we see when we have overarching story and everything. And it actually, like, crossing dimensions and stuff, which is something we don't actually see in a lot of episodes anymore. Then we have Jerry's episode, Final Dismissal, where it's the perfect personification of when like Rick and Morty just like pushes the envelope in ridiculous, absurd comedy, which I also enjoy. And then, like, no offense, but the episodes in between all literally felt like plots I had wrote talking to friends in high school. Every single one of these were just like ideas I've personally had in detail of like, what if I could grind in my sleep and learn how to do stuff? If you clone yourself, I've had that conversation so many times with like all of my friends. And then like the video game thing where your consciousness is split across everything. Like all of these just felt like ideas somebody kind of like pitched, and then they just made it because like Rick and Morty has a big budget now and animation's hard. So you gotta churn out the stories, and it feels like it's years in between seasons as it is, so you gotta make more, and people will watch whatever, and you gotta sell Wendy's. By the way, French toaster sticks, kinda mid. But that's enough for this episode. Thanks for watching. If you're returning from the last video, please like, and if you're not subscribed, make sure to do that, and stay tuned for more. I'm planning on doing something about like Rick and Morty and Cyberpunk, and how like there's nihilism in animation and how it works so well. And then I have a theory about the last episode of House of the Dragon I was thinking about making a video about. So if you want to support the channel and see more theories and stuff from me, and if you want to see gameplay of when I'm on Twitch or YouTube, stick around, follow me for more.